Welcome to session BP 1299. My name is Craig Little. Today we're going to talk to you about some new ways to deploy and manage SUSE Linux. We've got a couple of new solutions around SLE Micro for SUSE and SLE Micro for SUSE Rancher. So let's take a look and see what we're going to talk about next.
Yeah, so from an agenda perspective, what we're going to do is we'll take a brief look, sort of an overview of some of the automation strategies and management types that we've had in the past. And then we're going to dive in and take a look at SLE Micro and what SLE Micro for SUSE Rancher is. And then there's a demo as well that we're going to do. So um, go ahead and run the next slide. So I'm Brian, and here's my contact information. I'm based out of Southern California. So if you're in the neighborhood, let's go out and catch a beer.
Craig Little. I'm also in the West. Brian and I work together as two of the sales engineers for the West, but I'm based in Phoenix. And like Brian said, if you're in the neighborhood, please feel free to reach out, and we'd love to chat with you about what's going on. So let's take a look at Linux deployment automation. This is something that we've all worked around over the years. We've got many different approaches to doing it. And as I put this list up here, Brian and I in the past have kind of talked about some of these things, some of them at length. There's some of them that are our favorites. Some of them we're going, man, that's been around forever. But they all have a useful place in deploying Linux. So we have things like AutoYast. That's one of those that's been around for quite some time. We've got Kiwi. We've got Terraform. Brian, which one of these is your favorite?
I like the Terraform approach, although AutoYast is certainly my go-to. I think one call out that's sort of missing here on the public cloud side, or maybe even private cloud, is the cloud init components as well that would tie in, that have all been a part of people's lives in the past. And we're not necessarily going to get rid of all of them, but we're going to augment them and give you some more choices and some things we can kind of make things a little better.
And we haven't even really talked about templates. Templates with virtualization is a lot of people's go-to with VMware, with public cloud pieces. But the cool thing is, we're not getting rid of any of those. Well, AutoYast might be.
We'll
Well,
talk about that in
well,
just a couple slides.
exactly. We'll talk about that in a little bit here. But we're adding two new ones with SLE Micro and SLE Micro for SUSE Rancher.
Yeah, and they'll have their own deployment scenarios and use cases. So they may challenge the traditional methods that we've had in the past on the previous slide, and so that's why we're kind of here today to talk about what's new.
We also have that ongoing lifecycle management pieces where you got to patch those systems, you got to deal with and potentially configuration changes, maybe auditing and things of that nature. And we've got some great tools for that space as well. And what's kind of fun is we look at some of these tools, we have integrations into SLE Micro using some of these tools like SUSE Manager.
And the salt states I'd want to call out, because
Salt states are huge.
salt states kind of fall nicely into this declarative landscape for configuration management, or configuration as code idea. And by leveraging that, I think we're really going to be offering some nice new additions to how we can provision a new node by leveraging some of these more declarative approaches.
When we talk about it here in that Linux lifecycle, we're talking about more of laying on additional configuration
Yeah, yeah,
pieces, but we're going to take that same technology and apply it in a little bit different fashion, and it's going to be fun.
yeah.
I'm kind of excited to see where that
I think we're all
goes.
going to like it.
So use cases for SLE Micro. And if you've followed SLE Micro for any length of time, because it's SUSE, this is something that we've been working on for a little while. This just isn't a brand new thing. Currently, we're getting ready to release, or already have released 5.2. 5.3 is on the horizon. But the use cases that are kind of in mind for the engineers that have been working on this is a lot of container host, Kubernetes cluster nodes, lightweight KVM virtualization hosts. That way I've got it just nice, tight, down to the minimum of what's necessary to do that job, but very, very secure. Public cloud is another potential use case. Are there other use cases that you can think of as well?
Sure, and the edge cases, and so that minimal installation is perfect for the edge, where you may have limited power or network or space. There's a lot of different things that you have to consider, and so this is an operating system that's sort of built to run those kinds of environments
Well, the headline says it all, from the
from
cloud
the
to the
cloud to the
edge.
edge.
Yeah, but frankly, if you're headed down this road of immutable OS, you could do this inside of your data center as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
So there's some good pieces to kind of pay attention to as we look at these components. So let's take a look at SLE Micro.
Yeah. So what is SLEE Micro? And so and we'll call out a couple of these. The first one being, and we'll talk about the adaptable aspect a little later as well. But instead of sort of the generic approach to delivering an operating system, let's come up with one that is adaptable for the environment or the use case scenario or the workload that it's going to be providing support for. And as Craig mentioned on the previous slide, an immutable operating system. So one that is um, somewhat secure from the perspective of it's a read only file system until
Not
you
easy
want.
to change.
Well, that's
Not easy to change.
not
Not
easy
easy
to
to change
change,
from an external point of view.
but is changeable. For example, when you want to do patches and updates, we
Right.
have a provision for it, but we have a um, you sort of know what you're doing provision methodology. It's a purposeful driven update versus just wide open. Anything can change at an instant.
Yeah, the wild, wild west. You
Exactly.
know.
But it's still going to be based on core SLES technologies and all
Right.
the goodness of hardware certifications and security and things like that
Well,
we've brought forward.
we're coming up on the 30-year anniversary of SUSE as a Linux distribution. We've learned a few things over those
Yeah, yeah.
years.
It's not our first time here
On
at this rodeo for sure.
exactly.
And adaptable is sort of what the third bullet point sort of lends to, which is this idea of a customized for a specific market or customer requirements. And actually talk a little bit more about that here coming up in a couple extra slides. We talked a few minutes ago about it being lightweight, minimal footprint. Again, great, format for the edge and the smaller, less resource capable devices. But cloud to data center to edge. So it's not restricted in terms of functionality. It's just purpose driven
Right.
and built.
And in the data center, even though you have tons more resources at your disposal, I want to get density on my virtual hosts. I want to get secure operating systems in place, even in my data center, even on those systems that are buried far deep into the bowels of our IT infrastructure. You still want these same kind of concepts
And there's nothing
because they
wrong with
get you reliability,
being resource um,
efficient.
efficient, even in
Yeah,
the data center. Let's try to get the most out of the data center. The ones that we might still have. Let's get the most out of it. Or if it's in the
exactly.
cloud, it should be as resource capable, but respective of the environment. And let's try to get the most bang for our buck when we're trying to deploy into the cloud.
Because yeah, absolutely. If I can step down one level of VM classification, that's money in my pocket
Yeah,
at the end of the day.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, and then security. Security is always huge. Come on, we got everybody needs to run it, and this is SLE Micro has the security framework pieces outside of the immutable pieces around SE Linux. So it's a good security framework to be able to work within.
And then lastly, ease of deployment configuration,
Yep.
and we'll talk a bit more about those that expand on that as we go through this presentation. So great architecture slide, sort of trying to call out a few of the newer components that we're leveraging. You'll notice under core functionality, a whole brand new thing called Yomi, and we'll talk about what Yomi is here in just a minute. But Yomi and the Toolbox container will be called out here in a couple extra slides. But the idea is newer technology for these newer workspaces and newer places for deployment. Um, We call out here read-only Btrfs immutable file system under core functionality at the bottom,
Yep.
as well as transactional updates. And the idea behind transactional updates is that when we apply an update, we will either apply the entire update or we apply none of the update. And the beautiful thing is that we will, because we're leveraging Btrfs, we'll take a snapshot of the running operating system, we'll update that snapshot, and if all goes well, then we'll make that the new snapshot upon the reboot. If something were to fail in the middle, if something didn't update correctly, then we'll just erase that snapshot and we
So
can
kind of a
start
roll
over.
forward mode
Yeah,
as opposed to a roll back.
exactly. Exactly. And
Very
then
cool.
we'll talk about under image configuration, this idea of combustion to ignition. What are those if you've never heard of them before? And then on the far right, under optional installation and included with imaging and ISO, we've got the Cockpit Web Manager, which is a brand new facility that we provided, so that when you have many deployed and most likely edge devices, being
Right.
able to manage them remotely and not expecting to have a keyboard and monitor on every one of those devices. How do I get to them and manage them? And we'll take a look at that in our demo.
But I got a question here. I'm not seeing Docker on this list,
You aren't seeing Docker on this list, correct?
but we have Podman, which is our new single host container engine that we're running.
Yeah.
I know it was a little bit of a leading question there, but I wanted to point out that one piece of it. And it looks like we're also talking about ARM support, which is really kind of interesting from that edge use case
Sure.
story. So let's talk about how we get the automation into SLE Micro.
Yes, and AutoYast was our, we talked about that a few slides ago. That's sort of been a go-to for a long time in order to do sort of a template-driven, how do I build a brand new server that matches the same configuration of my last server?
I remember doing it on SLES 8 and SLES 9.
Yeah, it's been around for quite a long time. But now we're introducing this newer approach, leveraging something called Yomi, which is yet another
Management interface,
installer
maybe?
or something,
Yeah.
another. But the idea is it takes on a different approach to doing the same thing that AutoYast did. And so it's a newer installer for the SUSE family, but designed as a salt stack state. Say that 100 times real fast. A salt stack state, which gives me the ability to define more of this declarative approach to how my installation is going to look, and give me some functionality that I just didn't really have under AutoYast to get to the same point. Yomi is going to give me a lot more functionality, and we have our link here to our GitHub page that will talk you through what Yomi is and give you some of the details.
And salt stack are the salt stack states. Yeah, I agree with you. That's tough to say.
Yeah, say that.
But those salt stack states are something that we've been doing for a number of years now. We've supported it in SUSE Manager. We've also supported them as standalone configurations if you've been following some of the automation pieces around SLES for SAP. So we've been doing this for a little while, and we really see the value of this technology.
And the industry's been doing it for a while.
Yeah.
So it's not just something that's just a SUSE only technology. Salt's been around for a while. There's a bunch of goodness in it that we found, and we're actually now leveraging it as part of our system building approach to how do I deploy a bunch of these edge devices and do it in a timely fashion.
Absolutely. One last thing, again, like the missing Docker on the previous one, I see a bullet here where AutoYast will be deprecated in future releases.
Yeah.
They're killing AutoYast.
But we've got that learning, much better approach.
No, I know. But all that learning I did with SLES 9, I'm going to have to learn something new, Brian.
Yeah. Well, that's what it's all about. Learn something new.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the tooling.
Well, we have two new approaches here. And I don't want to, I kind of say new. Ignition has been around for a bit. The Core OS folks had created this thing called Ignition. And the idea was upon first boot of a server, let's say, or some kind of device, there would be a couple steps that would be run through to do things as we see here, partitioning disks and writing files and enabling services and configuring users. And it was just a way to do a one-time system setup upon first boot. But we've come up with something else called combustion that sort of leverages and does, we do everything that ignition can do, plus we can do things like create additional files, we can install packages, we can set up separate devices, repartition hard drives. And
We got to do better on our building of slides and kill the tongue twisters
I
next
tell
time.
you, but combustion gives you more of a scripting style functionality where you have a little bit more control over what you can control and what you can contribute to as you build out your operating system, on a first boot. Both of these technologies deal with, what do I do on first boot? How do I go from bare metal or a blank virtual machine into a fully running, functional, but to my specs designed and built? So both get you there, but ignition has been around. Um, it's been surfaced in several areas. Right. We're leveraging and moving towards this idea of something else called combustion that will do what ignition can do plus more.
And then we got afterburn, which is an additional component that kind of lays out that one-shot agent to lay down those specific components that you need for cloud-like platforms.
Yeah.
And so it is used in conjunction with either the ignition or combustion.
Typically, yeah.
And so we've got some additional tooling there in that piece. And then Toolbox. I like toolboxes. You know that, Brian? They're kind of fun.
Yeah, and this Toolbox is pretty nice as well. And one of the things we talked about a couple slides ago was the fact that SLE Micro has this idea of an immutable file system. So it's a read-only file system. We're trying to limit the changes to it. But as an administrator, if you were to go to the command line or try to perform operations, you might be a little frustrated that, well, everything's read-only and turned off, and it's not allowing you to make the changes that you were expecting to be able to make.
At least if you're using traditional methods.
Exactly. So the Toolbox gives me this privilege, again, because we're leveraging Podman, we can run containers. And what the Toolbox gives me is a privileged container that lets me gain access to the root file system under this mounted area called /media/root. And inside of there, I can run all my zipper tools and I can do all the things that I would traditionally do, running my zipper commands, things like that. And it will survive reboots and changes that I make.
Pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
To have this capability to get in and manage it in an easy fashion.
And one that's really common, or not really common, but one that people are used to having exposure to.
Right.
So it's a very convenient, environment for them.
And it goes and solves those potential heartaches, as it were, or challenges that you run into by moving towards that immutable operating system style.
Yeah. Yep. Because it's new.
So that's the quick overview of the SLE Micro in general. Now we're going to talk about the specific integrations for Rancher. And this is more of a forward look as we move forward with SLE Micro. Today, if we look at the overall Rancher management stack type of framework, what we have is the Kubernetes management layer. So we're managing it from that Kubernetes layer up point of view within Rancher. But with SLE Micro for Rancher, we are going to be adding in the ability to manage the operating system from within the Rancher interface. And so if you notice on the left-hand side of this slide, we've got the system update controller, registration service, attestation, and onboarding services that will get added into the Rancher components to be able to now have Rancher reach down into that OS level to be able to manage the OS components in addition to the Kubernetes and container layers above that. It's really some exciting technology. Today we are using more of how we're managing that today is really more of that edge solution set, whether that be SUSE managers or SUSE manager for retail or other edge types of technologies. We can manage those today, but tomorrow we're going to make it even easier through the use of the SLE Micro for SUSE Rancher 5.2. I know
Say it a
I need to get
thousand
another
times.
breath in then.
I hear you. Well, that system update controller is going to be that key component
It
there
is.
that will allow me to update, patch my operating system components that are running underneath
Neath,
my Kubernetes, being able to
which
patch
is kind of
them.
wild.
Yeah.
So I'm actually let me flip back to that. So we've got management components that are running inside of Kubernetes that are reaching down underneath the Kubernetes layer to manage those OS pieces.
Yes.
I'm kind of excited
Yeah. That's going to be some good
because
stuff.
the one negative at the moment is it's not available with the full integration with Rancher until later this year.
Yeah. So
I know
sometime in
we
the
got to
fall.
wait. I know we got to wait, Brian.
Yeah. It's
This
always
is
wait. It's always
it's unfortunate.
stop and wait.
Exactly. But it's good to see it moving forward. We've got a good design. I've seen some pieces in early alpha. We'll say maybe beta, but things are looking good. The other component that's coming out of this is we do have SLE Micro as part of the container registry. And I don't know if you guys that are watching the presentation have gone out and looked at registry.suse.com, but we have a whole slew of container images that are available for you guys to utilize. We've even got some good beta container images where I'm seeing some SLES 15 SP4 base container image.
Hmm.
We've got a minimal, we've got a Rust version, and there's the micro container image right there. So we've got some good pieces that are out there up and running. And if you need to go old school, looks like we've got releases clear out to a SLES 12 SP3
Yeah.
at the moment. Now, not under general support anymore, or the support guys would be yelling at me after I publish this.
Yeah.
So something to kind of keep in mind. And it does call it out there. But registry.suse.com.
Well, the next bullet point on our slide calls out a great little feature. These images are free to use and redistribute for use within our SUSE Rancher
Exactly.
deployments and
This
environments.
is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then the other piece is we're bringing in a piece around Elemental, and you can use Elemental together with these pieces for your SUSE Rancher deployments.
And if you don't know what Elemental is, which is highly probable, unless you've been, one of our partners or people that have been
Right.
developing alongside us, you can go look up what Elemental is. But in a nutshell, it's more of a toolkit for developing a or building a version of SLES for a particular use
Right.
case with specific features and functionality, sort of a one purpose or built for purpose version. Um, but it's going to be very helpful for us as we move towards this adaptable version of what we're doing with SUSE Linux,
Right.
so that it's not just a general purpose, but built purposefully
For
version
your
of a
specific
Linux
use
operating
case.
system. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Now, one of the things to kind of keep in mind is we do have some demo pieces coming up. Take a look at the demo. We'll talk more about that here in just a minute, but take a look at the demo and we'll have some more information in there around the elemental kinds of components.
Yeah.
So like the sort of roadmap of where we're going. What we're looking at right now is we've got, like I said, we've been at this for a little while. On the SLE Micro version 5 was back in the Q1 of 2021. We got 5.1 came out at the end of 2021. Now we're stepping into some of the future pieces. We do have version 5.2 out today. The SLE Micro for Rancher, the initial release of that really is more of a fall kind of time frame.
Mm-hmm.
Some things have slid and changed from when this slide was built.
Little adjustments here and there.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
we're getting our groove. But
And then
this is sort of
5.3
the
though.
idea, exactly.
5.3 based on the SLES 15 SP4, and then moving forward into 5.4. I'm excited to see the 5.3 and 5.4. And to kind of see it all come together and get to a very polished kind of point of view.
But basically, something once a quarter kind of thing, up to
And
well, maybe not once a quarter. What are we looking at? Maybe every
two releases a
2
year,
releases a year, so every 6 months, but
and
up to
then
4 years of general support per release,
which is pretty cool,
which is pretty cool.
frankly. When you start looking at places that you might deploy this, you might not want to update as often from to a new version point of view. You want to keep them up to date from a security point of view and patches and vulnerabilities and those things, but not from that general. I want to change to version 5.3. Maybe I start with 5.2 and then drop into 5.4 in a couple of years. But it's some very good options. Let's talk demos. So we got some demo time coming up, tied to some of the tooling and some of the components of the SLE Micro environment that we
And
want
the
to show you,
management, and the
and the
management
management of it.
of all of the SLE Micro deployments that you may have in your environment.
And so we want to show those to you. And I don't know whether it'll be attached right after this slide, or potentially you may have to go jump over into the demo area of SUSECon, where you can go see a whole slew of our demo, a bunch of our demo, as well as a bunch of other demos. So please go take a look at that after you finish this session.
Yeah, so this was session BP 1299.
Yep.
So go find the corresponding demo if it's not inserted. And
Thank you for joining.
yeah, we appreciate your
Thank you
time,
for making it to this slide.
guys.
And we very much appreciate your time and attention.
Yeah.
Have a wonderful day and enjoy your rest of SUSECon.